welcome to Havre de Grace, Maryland, one of my favorite little towns in Maryland, right along the banks of the Susquehanna River. And behind me is a statue of the Marquis de Lafayette. Well, Brother Lafayette, if you're a Mason, and you'll see that Brother Lafayette is wearing an apron. Why is he wearing this apron? We're going to explain. Welcome to the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry channel. I'm Maynard Edwards, 33rd degree, and welcome to Havre de Grace, Maryland. Behind me, the statue wearing the Masonic apron, that is the Marquis de Lafayette. And if you're a Mason, that's Brother Lafayette to you and me. Marquis de Lafayette was a master Mason and very proud of that fact. In fact, he traveled all over the United States and went to lots of lodges in his time. Now, he didn't come to lodge here in Havre de Grace, Maryland, so why is he wearing this apron? Well, our friends and brothers at Susquehanna Lodge number 130 AF and AM of Maryland, here in Havre de Grace, whenever they're about to hold a meeting, they put an apron on the Marquis. How did this tradition get started? How long have you guys been doing this?
Probably since the late 80s. My father instituted this, who was a past master here, and we've just been carrying that tradition on.
And what's the reaction of the town been? I mean, it's sort of a staple at this point.
It's a staple. It's interesting. Just this evening, I was stopped to get gas on my way down here, and then I came to put the apron on, and a young couple saw me at the Royal Farm store dressed up in a tuxedo.
Because there was a meeting tonight.
Meeting tonight, and they saw me putting the apron on Lafayette, and they said, "What are you doing?" And I explained to them that the Marquis de Lafayette, who named the city of Havre de Grace, was a Freemason, and we put an apron on him every meeting night. And then when a brother passes away, we try to leave one on for at least 30 days.
And it's such a nice tradition, and generally speaking, has been relatively problem-free. I know earlier, was it this year or last year, there was some situation where the apron went missing, and the town was not happy.
That's correct, Maynard. It was this year, and our mayor, Bill Martin, who happens to be a member of our lodge, actually put up a trail camera down there to see if we could catch them. But it never, came to fruition, but we're not worried about it.
Lafayette did not visit the lodge because the lodge was not around in 1824, 1825 when he was coming through.
That's correct.
Susquehanna came along a little after that, right?
That's correct, 1867.
So a few years after, but still, I love that the Lodge brothers have taken responsibility for our brother out there,
Yes.
kind of right as you enter the main part of town. And we're going to talk to Chris Ruli, who's got some more history about Lafayette.
Brother Lafayette. So here's a guy who you'd think 16, 17, 18 years old, comes from a really old family. Do you remember that scene in Forrest Gump where you see Lieutenant Dan's, all the people in the past who died, and they're all like older generations of them dying, all the way back to the Revolutionary War? Think of that with his family. They've been fighting the British for hundreds of years. He comes from an old French line.
Really hates the Brits.
I think he was the one that said something to the effect of like, my duty as a Frenchman is to go fight the Brits. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing.
Everybody's got to have a goal.
Goes off to the United States. In fact, there's a whole, if you're interested in learning more about Lafayette's history, go read. There's a whole part where the French government and his family is trying to stop him from going to the United States. Gets to the United States, goes to the Continental Army, and has a letter from Benjamin Franklin introducing him to the Continental Army. And he goes, "I'm happy to help. I'm happy to assist in any way that I can. I'm here to fight. I'm here." And they go, "Yeah, whatever, kid." And then Benjamin Franklin says, actually, he's from one of the wealthiest families in the country. He knows the French monarchy. We really should help him. And they go, and more importantly, he'll do it for free. He won't ask.
Come on over, son.
All right, kiddo. Well, why don't you start with that? And so he becomes a major general in the army. He meets George Washington in Philadelphia around that time. So he gets his commission. He then meets Washington. And Washington initially is like, who's this kid, right? Because he's got all these other French mercenary soldiers of fortune. Lafayette's not like that. Lafayette visits George Washington's camp. And Washington goes, "Hey, is a little embarrassed. The state and condition of my camp isn't what you're usually seeing." And he paraphrases, he goes, I'm here to learn. I'm not here to, take lead. I'm here to learn. And I'm here, and I think that ingratiates himself with Washington. He goes, "Oh, okay, this kid's not here to tell me what I'm doing wrong. He's here to learn. I'm here to help him. We're all doing this together." And so Washington puts him in his inner circle, and he basically serves as an aide for Washington. He doesn't have command over troops. He doesn't, he's basically like just supporting Washington in the beginning. He's engaging. He's acting as a liaison. Then they put him into a couple battles. Brandywine. He falls off his horse, gets shot, but he successfully pulls everyone out of Brandywine, preventing a total, complete massacre. And everyone's pleased, and Washington, commemorates him with his honor. And he starts to get a lot of respect moving forward. He leaves, he goes back, he goes back to France. He negotiates critically a relationship with the French government. He goes back to the United States. He pins Cornwallis in Yorktown and pins him enough time to get Washington over. And they basically, by the time Washington gets there, the French are now here. Lafayette and his troops have pinned Cornwallis in Yorktown, and they basically end the war. So Lafayette, this 17, 18-year-old kid, helps the Americans win the war. Goes back to France. He gets hit by the wall that is the French Revolution. The American Revolution, the French Revolution are completely different animals. You go from one, which is a British force, to one now you're fighting yourselves. So imagine you're fighting yourself and there's a monarchy. He is in a position where he goes, well, I'm coming from a family I'm part of the monarchy. But he wants to do a constitutional monarchy. He wants to move the government away from what it is now. So on one side, the monarchists are saying, hey man, you were one of us. What are you doing?
You're a marquis.
What are you doing over here? And the other side, the revolutionaries are going, okay, cool that you want to do constitutional monarchy. We kind of want everything to go towards a full democracy.
Right.
We don't really want you guys. And so in an attempt to cater to both, right, because he thinks there should be a revolution, there should be a transfer over to power. He thinks it should be more peaceful than what it turns out to be. So in an attempt to appease both, what happens? He loses both sides. He loses all capital, political capital. He loses support. There at one point, the French revolutionaries call him a traitor to both classes. He tries to flee with his family. He's lost his goods. He's lost his family, the chateau, the money, all of his titles. He's lost it all. He tries to flee to come over to the United States. He gets locked up for 5 years until some guy with a big ego called Napoleon comes in, negotiates his release. Now, Napoleon is one of these guys where he goes, I've released the great Lafayette. I'm the guy who freed him. So clearly he's going to join my side. He's going to join my government. We're going to do this together. And Lafayette goes, I am done with the political game. At this time, Lafayette spending the rest of his life effectively trying to recoup his money, recoup his house, get the things back that his family had for generations that he just lost because of this revolution. And so you get to 1823. And there is an interest. He notes there's a small little interest in him going, well, it would be nice to go back to the United States. And James Monroe was the president at the time, also a Mason, and basically says, well, this is interesting. He wants to come back. But here's the problem. Lafayette is still a relatively poor guy. And so Congress basically says, listen, we will take care of you. And they start working with the states and invite him as the nation's guest. And in newspapers, they call him the nation's guest. We will pay for everything. We will get your transport. We will cover everything. You will stay at the best hotel. We will collect money and funds and raise to make sure that you come.
So dear Uncle Sam is picking up the tab.
Boy, oh boy, and do they ever. And so under those conditions, he goes, great, I'll come. He gets to the United States, New York, in August. So in August 1824, he arrives in the United States, and it kicks off this 13, 14-month tour of all 24 states of the United States. And so that's where my book starts, the work that I'm working on. I talk a little bit about Lafayette's history, about his Masonic career in the beginning of the chapters in my book, but the main portion of the book that I'm working on covers all of his Masonic activities, starting from the day he gets there all the way to the day he leaves.
So where was he? Let's cover that real quick. Where was he made a Mason? So in France.
We don't know.
Okay.
We don't know, and in fact, to say that we don't know, Robert Freak Gould, who was a huge, one of the founders of the Quater Coronati, he wrote a book on Masonic military lodges. He suggests or posits that he likely was initiated during the Revolutionary War, And by the way, Lafayette visits, whenever he's going and traveling throughout the country, he is meeting with former Revolutionary War veterans. He's meeting with the, governors, people of the state. And in the book, I talk about it. There's this sort of game of three that happens. So he first meets with the governors, people who are in the local government. He then meets with Revolutionary War veterans. Almost always he meets the veterans. If there's a veteran there that served with him or near him or next to him, he will meet them second or third. And then likely the last group, the first one of the last group, always the Masons. If there was a Masonic presence a major Masonic presence in the town, if he had time to do it, he would meet the Masons. There's a great story of when Lafayette and his son, because his son and his secretary, a guy named Andre Levasseur, visits. They visit Mount Vernon. Well, after the visit to his tomb, they come out of the tomb.
Because Washington's passed many years ago.
Many years ago, 1799,
yeah.
Washington dies. So this is at least 2 decades. Washington gets out of the tomb, and George Washington Parke Custis, who was basically in charge of that, he was basically not the executor, but he was in charge effectively of Mount Vernon at the time, gives Lafayette a Masonic sash of George Washington's and a ring that included a locket of his hair, we believe, and a Masonic jewel associated with George Washington. We have no record of it. It's literally just in this newspaper. The book goes through every single reference that I could find. If Lafayette met a Mason, shook his hand, there was one where he didn't have time to meet the Masons in Trenton, but the Masons of Trenton spent thousands of dollars creating this ornamental Masonic arch that he passed by during the parade. And so I try to include that. There are references to other little trinkets and items and things and doohickeys that he got during the visit. It's an interesting story. But surely I think Freemasonry played a part. Actually, clearly it did play a part in his American journey, his return back in 1824, 1825. And it continued to play a part after he left. He served as master of one of the lodges. He attended lodge activities in France. So we have those records, and I try to duplicate as much of that possible in the book. So you really see the entire lifeline of him being, starting out, his military career, his Masonic career, his political career in the book.
Brother Lafayette will be out summer of 2024. That's Brother Chris Ruli. So there's the story of Lafayette and his apron here in the middle of downtown Havre de Grace. If you're a Master Mason, I do hope you will come and visit and not only say hi to the Marquis, but also hop on over to Susquehanna Lodge number 130 right here in downtown Havre de Grace and say hi to those brothers as well. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. And if you're a brother from a lodge, Scottish Rite Valley, Shrine, whatever, drop a comment in the link below and tell us all about it. We'll catch you next time.